They say you never forget the moment the world stops pretending to love you, but I never expected it to come wrapped in ribbon and candlelight. For 32 years, I kept my head down, heart open, and calendar available. I was the one they leaned on when things fell apart, the one they remembered when they needed something done right. The quiet glue, the unpaid therapist, the dependable sibling, the friend who never missed a birthday even when everyone else forgot mine. But this year, for once, I dared to imagine what it would feel like to celebrate me. I spent weeks planning the evening, down to the last gleaming detail. A private room at Bellamy and Sons, downtown's crown jewel of old-world elegance and new-world indulgence, was booked a month in advance. I chose the Rosewood Suite, with its velvet chairs and gold trim, because it reminded me of the life I thought I could grow into if I ever stopped letting others harvest me like a resource. Custom menus were printed on ivory linen stock, each one embossed with my name in foiled calligraphy, scripted so softly you had to look close to notice. The place cards had everyone's names, their favorites, their dietary restrictions, inside jokes hidden in the wine pairings. A bottle of St. Emilion on each end of the table because Mom always said Bordeaux made her feel fancy, and I wanted her to feel more than tolerated for once. But what I didn't account for, what I couldn't allow myself to consider, was what would happen if no one showed up. It was 7 p.m. when I arrived, dressed in a burgundy-wrapped dress I'd bought on clearance, but wore like it cost 10 times more. I smiled at the maitre d', gave my name, and followed him past the open dining floor and into the suite that should have been filled with warmth, laughter, and the soft clinking of glasses held in celebration. Instead, it was just me and the candles, flickering like they were trying to breathe for both of us. I took my seat at the head of the long mahogany table, an unspoken throne in a kingdom that only existed in my head. The room glowed with a low golden light, and the waiter, a kind-eyed man named Isaac, poured water into every glass without being asked. He thought they were just running late. I thought so too. By 7:15, I'd straightened every place card twice. I checked my phone, nothing. No missed calls. No texts. Just a pinned message from the group chat, a passive, can't wait to celebrate, from 2 days earlier. I tried to tell myself there was traffic. Maybe parking issues. Maybe someone got the time wrong. Anything but the truth that buzzed like a wasp beneath my ribs. At 7:32, Isaac returned and refilled my glass. Still, he said nothing about the emptiness around me, only offered a quiet, "Would you like to start with the amuse-bouche?" like we were keeping a shared secret neither of us had consented to. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's wait another 15 minutes. But even as I said it, I felt the first tremor of realization. I was alone. Not just in this room, but in the deeper sense that slices through your skin and goes for the bones. At 7:45, my phone lit up. A single notification. Group selfie. 8 faces. None of them mine. The caption read, "Spontaneous night out." Couldn't resist. Woman dancing wine glass #family vibes. It was taken at a rooftop bar across town. The skyline sparkled behind them. My brother's girlfriend wore the earrings I'd given her for Christmas. My sister clinked glasses with my best friend. My mother smiled like she hadn't spent the morning texting me about her bad back and how she might not make it. I wasn't just excluded. I was forgotten. No explanation. No apology. Not even a lie to keep me warm. I stared at the screen, heart thudding like a slow drum of shame, and let my hand fall slowly into my lap. My fingers curled around the place card that bore my mother's name in gold. It felt like a relic. A monument to a version of her that had never really existed, not for me. The candles flickered again. Isaac returned, his eyes softer this time, as if he'd seen the photo too and didn't know what to say. "Would you like to proceed?" he asked gently, his voice low, careful not to disturb the silence that now pressed into my throat like a weight. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's proceed." I ate every course, slowly, methodically, as if each bite could scrub the humiliation from my tongue. The truffle bisque was rich and fragrant. The duck confit melted like silk against my teeth. I savored every note, every morsel, not because I was hungry, but because I needed something to feel real, even if it was just the food. No one called. No one texted. The waiter refilled every glass again, even the empty ones. Especially the empty ones. When dessert came, a chocolate torte with my name written in white icing on a single raspberry macaron, I stared at it for a long time before slicing into it. Each cut was deliberate. Surgical. I ate slowly, not because I wanted to prolong the experience, but because I wanted the room to witness what they had done. I wanted the candles to remember. At 9 p.m., I stood up, smoothed the hem of my dress, and picked up the box of leftover place cards, menus, and the unused party favors I had selected with aching care. I tipped Isaac generously. Too generously. The kind of tip you leave when you're compensating for something no one else noticed, like dignity bleeding out in front of a man who never stopped being kind. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my cousin Jen. She had sent a video. My mother dancing on a rooftop in silver flats she claimed hurt her arches. My sister filming with glee. My best friend laughing in the background, cocktail glass raised like a salute to betrayal. Underneath it, a message. Didn't want you to feel left out. Hope you're having fun too. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked 4 blocks to my car in silence, the heels clicking like accusations against the concrete. I drove home with the windows down, the city lights blurring into ribbons of white and gold. I didn't cry. Not once. Not even when I passed the billboard that said, "You deserve better," like it was aimed directly at me. I got home, poured a glass of wine I didn't want, sat at the kitchen table, and I opened the note I'd tucked into my own place card. A private joke, meant to make me smile when the night got too loud. It said, "You did this for you." And that's enough. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Because I'd finally understood the depth of the lie I'd been telling myself for years. That if I kept giving, they'd eventually give something back. That loyalty, sacrifice, and love would circle back around like karma or some forgotten check in the mail. They didn't. They wouldn't. And something inside me, something old and quiet and very tired, finally stopped waiting. I stood up, walked to the bathroom mirror, and I said it out loud. They'll never do this to me again. In the hours, days, and weeks that followed that humiliating, candlelit birthday vigil, I said absolutely nothing, not a word, not a sigh, not even a cold, clever quote dropped into a group chat for dramatic effect. I did not write a lengthy post on social media draped in passive-aggressive sorrow, begging for validation disguised as poetic heartbreak. I did not text anyone the next morning, pretending to check in while secretly hoping they'd offer an apology too shallow to matter. I did not cry into a friend's voicemail, asking how something so carefully constructed, so painfully honest, could be ignored. Instead, I gave them what none of them could handle: complete silence. People like them are terrified of silence. They can tolerate screaming, tears, and even confrontation because those are just another performance, another chance to center themselves, cry louder, and cast their betrayal as a misunderstanding. But silence? Silence is the mirror they can't turn away from because it shows them exactly what they are. And for once, I didn't let them rewrite the ending. The first few days were filled with concerned messages disguised as concern, but bloated with assumption. "Hey, are you okay? We figured you needed some space. I hope you're not too upset. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You know we love you." It was just one of those spontaneous things. Every text a needle, every emoji a dull knife twisted by someone who wanted to pretend nothing had changed because, in their minds, nothing had. I was supposed to forgive without question, move on without pause, and quietly rejoin the rotation of people orbiting their convenience. But this time, I did something unthinkable. I didn't reply. No guilt-fueled explanations, no performative forgiveness. I gave them what they gave me that night: absence. And in that vacuum of acknowledgement, their illusion of power began to fracture. At first, they assumed it was temporary. They believed I was sulking, indulging in some dramatic emotional detox before inevitably crawling back, sheepish and apologetic, asking for a place at the table they so casually abandoned. But I wasn't sulking. I was observing, watching how quickly they tried to reframe the narrative, positioning themselves as the confused victims of an overreaction they never bothered to understand. They whispered in group chats that I was just sensitive, taking things personally, always doing the most, all while secretly refreshing their messages, waiting for me to respond and reset the balance they'd gotten so used to tipping in their favor. I let them wait. I let the silence grow until it became undeniable. And then I started rearranging things. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly, precisely, like a needle threading through every careless stitch they'd made with me over the years. The first thing to disappear was the Netflix account. It had been mine for years. The family plan I paid for, with their separate profiles each named like a punchline: Mom's rom-coms, Seth's dumb action crap, Sarah and wine, and mine simply labeled main. They never asked. They never offered. They just used it, laughed about the algorithm learning their tastes, and never once thought to chip in. I logged in one morning, hovered over the Manage Users tab, and removed them all. Every single one. No password change. No warning. Just gone. By the afternoon, my cousin texted me, "Hey, is the Netflix down? I keep getting a login error." I didn't answer. I watched as one by one, the quiet reliance they had built on me started to crack. 3 days later, my sister Sarah texted in the family chat, "Anyone else having trouble with Venmo group funds? Our brunch account just vanished." Of course it had. I deleted it. I was the one who set up that joint Venmo circle for weekend brunches, for holiday gift pooling, for spontaneous nights out that I usually wasn't invited to. And every time someone forgot to reimburse me, I quietly covered the difference. So I shut it down. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. They didn't deserve the infrastructure of my effort anymore. And then came the ride-sharing profiles. Seth had used my Uber business account for years, linked under Family Plan, so he could catch late-night rides without hitting surge fees. He'd added his girlfriend too, then his girlfriend's sister. I removed them all. The next morning, my email pinged with multiple ride receipt failures. Seth J's ride has been canceled. Payment method invalid. Good. I made coffee, smiled, and watched the dominoes fall. Every unpaid subscription. Every auto-renewal. Every little way I'd enabled their convenience without thanks. The Spotify family plan? Gone. The Amazon Prime account with all their shipping preferences saved? Locked down. The Canva Pro design profile Sarah used for her small business? Downgraded to free tier. I didn't send a warning. I didn't announce my exit. I just deleted myself from their convenience board, one square at a time. And the silence they once ignored suddenly began to throb like a siren. Because they weren't losing a sister, a friend, or a cousin. They were losing a resource they had spent years extracting from. They started calling. First, Sarah. "Hey, did something happen with the Venmo?" And also, "I tried to get into Canva this morning and..." I hung up. Then Seth. "Yo, did you mess with the Uber account? I had to pay out of pocket last night." I let it ring. Then my mother. "Sweetheart, your sister's been having trouble with her music subscription. Could you look into..." Nope. Let them call. Let them text. Let them sit in the quiet discomfort of suddenly having to carry what I had been silently shouldering for years. For once, let them do the math. And still, I said nothing. Because here's what they didn't understand. The quiet doesn't mean I'm weak. The quiet means I'm done. The utilities were next. They'd been using my name, literally, for the internet bill at our parents' house for over 5 years. When their credit score couldn't get the approval I offered. No one ever took it back. No one offered to take over. I paid the deposit, set up the account, and forgot it was still mine. Until now. I logged into the portal. Disconnected autopay. Flagged it as moving out. 3 days later, I got a text from Dad. "Internet's down. Can you check if there's an outage?" I replied with the first words I'd said in weeks. You'll need to call customer service. It's no longer my account. No emoji. No warmth. No explanation. Just the same blunt efficiency they had handed me on my birthday. The silence after that was deafening. I knew they were talking behind closed doors. I knew they were confused, angry, building a new narrative in which I was suddenly unstable, ungrateful, cold. But I didn't care. Because what they couldn't spin, what they couldn't twist, was that none of it had been done to punish them. It was simply the removal of privilege. They had been so used to living inside the house I built that they forgot it wasn't theirs. Now, they were standing outside in the rain, wondering why the lights had gone out. And still, I didn't shout. I didn't post. I didn't explain. Because their guilt wasn't my responsibility. Their confusion wasn't my burden. And their crumbling comfort wasn't my emergency. They had built an entire world where I was the scaffolding and never stopped to think what would happen if I stepped away. Now they were learning. And I wasn't coming back. It was nearly 3 weeks after the dinner that never happened, 3 long, wordless, surgical weeks, when the first crack appeared in the mirror they'd been so carefully avoiding. My phone, silent for days, buzzed to life while I was perched on a stone balcony that overlooked the Amalfi Coast, a soft wind teasing the edges of the silk scarf tied around my neck, the espresso in my hand untouched because beauty like this deserved stillness, not caffeine. The name on the screen didn't belong to family. It belonged to Talia, one of the few friends I hadn't yet decided to write off entirely. Her call came in 3 times before I answered, not because I wanted to speak, but because curiosity occasionally demands an audience, even when the show is predictably pitiful. I placed the cup down, leaned against the railing, and answered with a smooth, neutral tone that barely masked my disinterest. Hey. Her voice came through in a frantic rush, the kind of breathless panic that smells more like guilt than fear. Oh my God, where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. Your socials are dead. Your phone goes straight to voicemail sometimes. Your email bounced. What is going on? I paused for effect, letting the silence stretch long enough to make her squirm, before offering the answer that would soon light a match beneath her carefully constructed understanding of me. I'm in Italy. A pause. Wait, Italy? Since when? You didn't tell anyone you were leaving. Why didn't you say anything? I took a sip of espresso, now lukewarm but satisfying in its symbolism. Because I didn't need permission. And frankly, I didn't owe anyone a goodbye. She sputtered for a moment, trying to recalibrate. Okay, look. I didn't call to lecture you. It's just, something happened. Something messy. That word again. Messy. The same word they used when someone finally told the truth, when the narrative unraveled, when their control slipped through their fingers like wet sand. Go on, I said, knowing exactly what was coming, because karma rarely needs an invitation. It just shows up when the lie becomes too large to contain. It's the restaurant, she said, voice shaking in that performative way people do when they want you to believe they're the good guy in a disaster of their own making. Bellamy and Sons called me. Well, not just me, they called everyone who was listed on the booking. Apparently, since you prepaid and added everyone's names, and the deposit covered individual breakdowns, they processed the split cost across the listed guests. I didn't say anything because I knew she hadn't even gotten to the punchline yet. And since no one showed up, well, no one except you, they only refunded a partial portion of the menu price, but not the private room fee, not the setup, not the wine. So the remaining balance, after the partial refund was issued to the main card, got equally redistributed across all linked profiles. I could hear the panic now, the shame barely hiding beneath the surface. Everyone's cards got charged hundreds. I'm talking $400 each. I let the silence flood the space between us, savoring the delicious stillness of consequence echoing in someone else's world for once. You're telling me, I said slowly, every word sharp and deliberate, that the same people who couldn't be bothered to show up for my birthday, who lied, who snuck away to get drunk on someone else's dime, who didn't even send a sorry text until days later, are now stuck paying for the party they ghosted? Talia didn't answer immediately, but when she did, her voice was smaller, almost embarrassed. Yes, and they're freaking out. Sarah called me crying. Seth is blaming the restaurant. Your mom said this is all some sort of mistake. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not a fake laugh. Not a cruel laugh. But a deep, righteous, bottomless kind of laugh that comes when the scales of justice finally tip in your direction. And what did you say, Talia? Did you defend them? Did you blame me? Or did you tell them they got exactly what they bought with years of selfishness? She hesitated. I told them. I told them I'd try to reach you. I walked back inside the villa, the light from the sea casting fractured shadows across the marble floor, and stood before the open suitcase I hadn't even unpacked because my body was finally in a place where it didn't need to belong. Don't bother, I said calmly, setting the phone on speaker as I zipped up the last of my belongings. I'm not interested in resolving anything. There is no issue here. There's just math. Talia sighed. They're going to keep calling. You know that, right? You can't just ghost the people you've known your whole life. But that was where she was wrong. Because I hadn't ghosted them. Ghosting implies fear, shame, avoidance. But I hadn't disappeared out of grief. I had disappeared out of power. When people like them lose access to you, they call it abandonment. But when they discard you like expired currency, they call it boundaries. I didn't ghost anyone, I said coldly, slipping on my sandals and sliding my sunglasses over my face. I just relocated myself to a life where they don't exist. The silence on her end was thicker now. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. Is that really what you want? She asked finally, her voice trembling like she already knew the answer would burn. No, I said. It's not what I wanted. It's what I deserved. And frankly, it's the best decision I've ever made. The call ended without ceremony. I turned my phone off completely. And for the first time in years, I walked through a new city knowing that no one had the right to follow me. Because I hadn't just changed my phone number or unfollowed people on apps that no longer served me. I had rewritten the script entirely. I stopped being a side character in their ego-driven soap opera and became the writer of my own damn play. And the plot twist? They couldn't even buy their way back in. They had always assumed I'd come back, fold into forgiveness like soft linen on a laundry day they never helped with, pretending none of it mattered. But what they didn't know was that I had been planning this for a long time. Years, if I'm being honest. A slow-brewing exit built out of all the quiet disappointments they never bothered to notice. And now, they weren't just blocked from my accounts, they were blocked from my life. No access. No guest pass. No chance. I watched the sun slide behind the cliffs, the sky bruised with gold and violet, and I didn't feel vindicated or triumphant. I felt whole. Because this wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. By the time I returned to the country, sun-kissed, calm, and completely untethered from the weight of their expectations, the group I had once called mine had already started to turn on itself with the subtle grace of a car fire in slow motion, each person scrambling to escape the smoke while pretending their hands didn't smell of gasoline. No one said it outright at first, because shame is never honest in the beginning. It wears disguises like concern, misunderstanding, or just plain confusion. The kind that allows people to feign innocence while privately rearranging the story to suit their fragile egos. But it didn't take long before whispers became accusations. Accusations became posts, and posts became proof that the structure they'd built, the one that had stood for years on the unpaid labor of my loyalty, had finally, irrevocably, collapsed. One by one, I watched them try to salvage their reputations like rats dragging ruined tapestries out of a sinking room, too soaked in rot to save, but too proud to admit they were never meant to last. Sarah went first, of course. She always did. The self-appointed center of every narrative, she launched her soft-focus redemption arc on Instagram under the guise of a healing journey, beginning with a carousel of aesthetically curated snapshots of her holding crystals, journaling in the woods, and gazing out at a lake with the kind of faux contemplative expression people wear when they think self-reflection is a performance, not a process. Her caption read like a masterclass in deflection. Sometimes we hurt people we love, and we don't realize it until they disappear. But growth is messy, and I'm trying. Forgive me if I ever made you feel unseen. This year is about learning to love harder, even when it's inconvenient. No mention of what she had done. No mention of what any of them had done. Just vague absolution wrapped in soft lighting, and the kind of curated guilt that disappears the moment someone hits like. Seth tried a different approach, loud, defensive, and as graceless as I expected from someone whose idea of accountability always sounded like a middle finger with a shrug attached. He took to Twitter, lashing out at the restaurant, accusing them of fraud, then shifting the blame to me. Not by name, of course, but with enough context that anyone who had been paying attention could connect the dots faster than his logic ever could. Funny how people play victim after pulling a stunt that leaves everyone else footing the bill. If you can't handle adult conversations, don't invite people to dinner. The irony, of course, was that there had never been a conversation. They hadn't shown up. Not one of them. And now the only thing they were showing up for was damage control. My phone lit up for days. Missed calls. Voicemails. Passive-aggressive texts disguised as apologies. I didn't answer a single one. They tried Talia, too. Tried to use her as the bridge, the mediator, the neutral party they could push into the fire and hope I'd pull out. But I told her once, gently, firmly, permanently, that my silence wasn't a tantrum or a punishment. It was policy now. They had mistaken my absence for injury. They thought I was hiding. They thought I was licking wounds, plotting revenge, waiting for an apology I'd accept like a starving dog taking scraps from the same hand that once beat it. But the truth was simpler. And far colder. I didn't need them to pay anymore. I just needed them to remember. So I wrote something. Not a message. Not a call-out. Not a confrontation. Just a blog post, simple and clean, titled exactly the way it needed to be. How to know when you're done giving. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I didn't point fingers, didn't call them friends or family, didn't hint at what happened on that night when an entire room sat empty while my candle kept burning. I simply told the truth. The raw, unromantic, unmarketable truth about what it feels like to be the one who always says yes when everyone else builds their identity on saying no. What it means to be the dependable one until your dependability becomes entitlement in someone else's mouth. What it costs to carry a group, a family, a circle, without ever being invited to sit inside it. I wrote about the 1,000 tiny betrayals, missed birthdays, unpaid debts, unanswered messages, and apologies that came too late or not at all. I wrote about how easy it is for people to love your presence, but not your boundaries. I wrote about the day I decided to stop bleeding for people who never once offered a bandage. And most of all, I wrote about the silence, the beautiful, expansive, echoing silence that follows when you finally step away from a table where love was only ever served conditionally. I posted it anonymously at first. But people knew. They knew because truth has fingerprints. It has texture. It clings to your ribs long after you read it, long after you scroll away, long after you pretend it doesn't apply to you. It went viral within 48 hours. 1,000 shares. Then 10,000. Then 100,000. Comments flooded in from strangers, friends of friends, people I'd never met but who had lived versions of my story with different names and different nights and different excuses carved into their hearts. This is the most honest thing I've ever read. I didn't know someone else felt this too. Thank you for saying what I never could. But the comments that mattered most were the quiet ones. The unread messages. The unseen DMs. The silence from the people who knew it was about them, but could no longer reach me to ask if it really was. Because I was gone. Not hiding. Not broken. Just gone. Like mist in a city that finally stopped pretending it didn't need the rain. And as I stood in my kitchen weeks later, pouring coffee into a mug I bought for myself, in a home I paid for without help, in a life I no longer needed permission to live. I read the article one last time before closing the laptop. And I smiled. Because sometimes, disappearing isn't revenge, it's freedom. But when you leave the bill on the table, they'll remember you every time they reach for their wallet.